Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I'm Jackie, and I'm finally filming my favorite books of 2021. So I tried to film this last week, but I didn't like what I had filmed, and there were two other videos I wanted to film as well, so I just did those, and then I actually waited until we got my laptop situation taken care of. So now I have a new Mac computer, and we went to an Apple store, and because I'm not good at making those kinds of decisions, I'm still not very good at making those kinds of big decisions, because I don't know what's the best. I sometimes feel like I don't know what is always the smartest decision or what's the best decision in the long run. And we actually asked the guy at the Apple store, and he said, you know what, I would get a new laptop. So, I did, and now finally, I was off today, and I'm actually off for the next today, and then I'm off tomorrow and Tuesday, thankfully. So I could technically film this tomorrow or Tuesday, but I decided to film it today to get it out of the way. And you guys know the drill. I'm going to talk about my favorite books of the year. I have 15 or 16 books on here. And I like what Jack Edwards did on his channel, where he just said a couple of things that he liked about each book that he read for that year. Although I don't think he was necessarily specifically talking about his favorites. I think he was just talking about all of the books he read that year. So I'm going to do that instead to make this more efficient and less rambly. Okay, and I did try to stick with mostly books that I actually have, which I think I did a pretty good job there, because I don't know how to post. I still don't know how to add pictures to show you guys if I don't have a book in my possession. There are a couple books on here that I don't have in my possession. Like the first one I'm going to talk about, which is Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. And here I wrote, let me see, I have a little notebook here where I list some bullet points on the stuff I like about the book. First of all, let me tell you, this is a Cinderella reimagining where the Cinderella story did happen, but it's in years later, like 500 years later or something. And now, in this tradition that the king will hold a ball, and it is mandatory for young maidens to go, and they will get chosen by a guy. They get 3 chances. And then, if they don't get chosen by someone to be his bride by her third time, then they're worthless. They are banished or something. I don't remember exactly, but and the guys, of course, can attend whenever they want. There's no restrictions or anything like that. And so our main character is not too happy about this, and she meets someone after her own ball goes wrong. She meets someone that has suspicions, are starting to piece together what really happened with Cinderella years ago, and that the king might not be what he seems. It really, showing how unjust this whole system is. First of all, so here are the points about that book that I like. Well, first of all, it is there's some representation in there of our main character is a POC character, and also she is also a queer character, and she in fact, part of the reason why she doesn't like this, not just that it's unjust to women, but also she has no interest in any of the men in this kingdom. She actually is in love with this young woman, and eventually, but because of all these laws, and because this woman she's in love with, she is absolutely terrified of how the king will react, and knowing that they have to let a guy pick them, she ends up, like pushing Sophie, our main character, away. And actually, the woman she meets another woman who knows that things are not what they seem. She ends up developing feelings for her while they're trying to find out the truth. So also, I love how it has a twist. It's kind of a unique at least to me anyway. It is a very unique version of the story. First of all, it's not just retelling the Cinderella story. It's also kind of taking what we know and making us question things and twisting some characters that seem like good guys and they're not so good after all. And just changing things. Like Cinderella is definitely one of those stories where I prefer the adaptations and retellings over the original story, the original fairy tale. And I've only read a few, as far as, like, I've seen a lot of movies, but I've read only a few novels. And this one is one of the best versions, I think. I mean, I love the Lunar Chronicles. And their first book was a Cinderella reimagining. It had a sci-fi twist to it. I mean, the whole thing was sci-fi. But this one, I think, like I said, I think I kind of love this one as far as Cinderella retelling more because of what they did with the story. It also had this great creepy atmosphere to it, like an unsettling atmosphere as Sophie and this other girl, who I wish I could remember her name, but I don't, when they were trying to figure out the truth and trying to figure out what really happened in the whole deal with, like, the king and how he might not be what he seems. Okay, so that's what I want to say about that one. And then the next book I want to talk about is historical fiction, The Gates of Rome. So I've been very intrigued, especially with the whole Julius Caesar story. In fact, I'm currently reading it, almost done. It's getting to the point where I'm like, I still enjoy the book, enjoy reading about Rome, but it's like, okay, I want to get this done so I can jump into a new book. One of the new books I'm thinking about. So, but I'm reading, Mary Beard's SPQR, A History of Ancient Rome. And, I think I bought it last year, and I did start reading the first couple pages of that book last year. But I'm currently reading that, and then, years ago, my sophomore English class in high school, we read Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, which that is brought up when we're in the chapter talking about Caesar. And actually, the famous Et tu, Brutus, is something Shakespeare made up. And that's not actually what Julius Caesar says when Brutus betrays him. But it was really, but this is the first book in a 4-book series. Forgive me, I cannot pronounce the author's last name, and I also can't really see it because it has a stupid thrift book sticker on it. In the library, actually, no, it's the library, because I guess they got it from the library. So what I want to say is, so this is kind of an origin story of Julius Caesar and Brutus. And this one starts with when they are kids, and they eventually end up going to Rome. What I like about this one is, I haven't learned a lot about, I've only, I said, in my sophomore year of English, we read Julius Caesar's, Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And then in social studies, I probably talked about this. But I don't remember really learning a lot about ancient Rome. I think we probably talked about at least a little bit, but not a whole lot. And I only did one history class in college. I don't know if I had to take any other history. I don't know if I had to take any history classes other than, it was necessary. I absolutely had to, but I took, and it was women's history, so it was not on ancient Rome or anything. And I really like ancient Rome, especially because we constantly hear about Greece and um the medieval world, like Europe and stuff. But and thanks to Marvel, we learn a lot about. Even though Marvel, the Thor comics is not accurate, I think they help with they learn about Norse and there's a lot of historical fiction, like movies and TV shows and books about the Vikings and stuff. But again, we don't learn a lot about Rome, so I think it's really cool. I think it was kind of really fun to read something that takes place in ancient Rome. And it was also really fun. Now, I don't know how accurate this is. I mean, I'm assuming that the author, Con Iglunden, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce it. I'm sure he did his research, and I imagine a lot of the authors who write big, like, historical fiction series and stuff, I'm sure they do a lot of research and they could potentially be scholars. So I don't know how, I'm assuming this is accurate or close to being accurate. And it was just really cool to see these characters as young boys and seeing glimpses of their future selves, who they, looking at their relationship and their friendship, because they're friends in the book. Which, again, I don't know if they were friends in real life or not. I mean, in fact, the Mary Beard's nonfiction does not really touch on Julius Caesar's childhood. We just talk about him being... Because it's not a Julius Caesar novel. It's... or it's not a nonfiction about Julius Caesar. It just does... It touches on Julius Caesar and his reign, and then when we get to the betrayal and him being assassinated and all that, so we don't really get to all the stuff about him growing up and who he was as a person. We just, like I said, talk about his reign as an emperor of Rome. So it was fun to see them as, like I said, as young boys. And then, yeah, and like I said, to see the potential of the young men these boys will become. Especially knowing what's going to happen in the future. And knowing that their friendship is not going to last forever. Which also makes it very sad and a bit emotional. So, yeah, this is only the first book. There are 3 more books to read, so I do want to read. If you saw my my video on where I talk about, what was it? Books I want to read this year, I do mention Death of Kings, which is the second book. And since I'm actually reading, and since reading Mary Beard's nonfiction work, her history on Rome, I'm guessing I think I know what they mean by Death of Kings. I'm guessing that book is going to be about a certain point in Roman history. So I read that. And next, I'm going to talk about... lost book. Next is a trilogy, actually. And a trilogy that I read throughout the whole... Sorry, I'm a little scattered. Of course, that's nothing new. Okay, put these down there until I can talk about them. Okay, next is this trilogy. The Bartimaeus Trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. I think a lot of people know him. I think he's the author of... I remember it was a Lock and Key? Or is that... No, Lock and Key I think is Joe Hill's book. I know he has a YA series or like an adult series that's popular. But this is, or at least it starts middle grade, but then the trilogy kind of, it's one of those series where you age with one of the main characters. And I don't know what time period it's supposed to be, but although someone did say the 1920s. This takes place in London, England, and the government is ruled by magicians. And one of our main characters is Nathaniel, he's an orphan, and he's been taken in by this one magician who trains him and teaches him, and he and Nathaniel have very different ideas of what Nathaniel is capable of. And we learn years ago when Nathaniel was a little boy that his master and his master's colleague humiliated Nathaniel. So he's now a little bit older, like pre-teenage, and he wants to get revenge on these people, and he thinks he can handle a lot more than his master thinks he can. And he teaches himself and progresses a lot more, and he ends up summoning a djinn, our series title character, Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus is just mischievous, he's snarky and sarcastic, he doesn't respect humans, but of course the djinn are slaves to magicians. And the only thing that protects Nathaniel from Bartimaeus and keeps Bartimaeus tied to him is the idea of the djinn using his true name against him, which there are other fantasy series that use that whole true name thing as well. I don't know what they are though, but I think there are other series. And they have a very hostile relationship, very antagonistic. But they end up helping each other because he has Bartimaeus spy on his master's colleague, and they find out he has some big ambitions, and he wants to be running the government. So they decide to find a way to expose him, and they find out he also has a plan to, destroy things. And so this whole book is Nathaniel and Bartimaeus reluctantly working together. And then while the next two books are Nathaniel's now a teenager and he has a new name because it's not good for someone to know your true name. And there's kind of in the book, one of the points I wanted to make was the book reminded me of Falcon and Winter Soldier, the Disney Plus series, with Winter Soldier and Falcon from Captain America teaming up. And it kind of has a similar plot to the show because there's a rebel group that does not like how the government is doing things, especially because, which is actually ironic, is a little funny concern that we are still in the middle of a pandemic. And when Falcon and Winter Soldier, there was this whole blip thing, and where all the people disappeared in the whole Avengers story. And this rebel group doesn't like how government's handling things. And it kind of makes me think a little bit of what's going on right now and here in the world, what's going on in our world. But anyway, so it has a similar storyline because the character that is introduced in the second book, this young girl who does not, she is part of the rebels who do not like how the magicians are running the government and how they are treated. And she kind of reminded me of the girl, I wish I could remember her name, that girl from the show as well, except for the girl in this series is not as mean and not as scary as that other girl in Falcon and Winter Soldier. but has a very similar plot and similar themes, and except Nathaniel is one of the other things I like about this trilogy is that Nathaniel is starting to go kind of like, it almost feels like a villain origin story when Nathaniel's character. Now, I'm not going to tell you where his character ends up, but it feels like a villain origin story with what his character, because he kind of becomes quite the asshole in the second and the third book. He's not a very likable guy, but Bartimaeus makes up for that with his charming, colorful personality. He is very, like I said, snarky and sarcastic. He's very critical of humans. And this book, one of the things that I think is really cool that, like, I know a lot of people do not like when books have footnotes, but this book, it does have footnotes, and it's fun footnotes to read, because it's Bartimaeus' like other thoughts, that he's the one like his side thoughts about things, and talking about his past a little bit. You know how you sometimes get sidetracked. It's, in conversations. It's kind of the footnotes are kind of like that, and they're very fun and very amusing. And they're also very interesting, like, they kind of give backstory to this world, like a history to Bartimaeus. And there is actually a prequel book. So, like, this book became 4-book series, but that's because there's a prequel book about Bartimaeus' adventures before he met Nathaniel. And, so we get some of the backstory and Bartimaeus' thoughts, but in footnote form. And I like, when I'm annoyed with Nathaniel, I love, Bartimaeus makes up for it as a character, and he's funny, and I'm very entertaining to read sometimes. I mean, not sometimes, all the time. Most of the time, he's very he really keeps you, if not laughing out loud, at least smiling, because he's just, like I said, he's just such a funny character. And like I said, it's only 3 books, so, which was nice. So it was middle grade YA, so it didn't take me that long to read. So I really like that too. But yeah, so that's my other one. So now we have, okay, let's Stephen King, of course. I read Needful Things by Stephen King. I've read a few books towards the end of last year that kind of reminded me of this book, that had similar elements to this book. In this one, this takes place in Castle Rock, one of the many towns in Maine that King writes about. Although I don't think Derry's a real place in Maine. I think it is based off of a real place, but Derry isn't real itself. And there's this little shop in town that has been empty for a while. And if you read the Sundog kind of is, it gives you the backstory of this little shop. And it is taken over by this guy, Leland Gahn, who owns this little, not antique, but thrift kind of, or like, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to think of, but this little shop that he calls it Needful Things, and he provides whatever you need, but at a price. Unfortunately, the price is not cash. The price is actually, as these people go in there, he offers them a deal. He's like, I can give you this thing that you think you need, but you have to do something for me. And he calls them favors. And each of these favors seem like harmless little pranks, but slowly over time things get worse and worse and get dangerous for the people in this town. And this is actually another book that I would recommend, or at least looking up the information. Another book that, that I'm like reading beforehand before this, or at least getting some like the synopsis. Like maybe I'll look on Wikipedia, see what happens in this book, which is the Dark Half, because there's a character from the Dark Half that what happened to him. Alan Pangborn is the character, and he is a local sheriff, and you find out something happened in that the conflict in that book. He calls back to it in this book because he is the sheriff in the town in this book. So what I like about this one is, first of all, I love stories about small towns, especially in horror books. And like I said, towards the end of last year, I read a couple like that, that took place in small towns, and a book that I started, the first book I finished this year, Imaginary Friend, also touched on that, had that similar small town vibe. And a small town going mad, turning and becoming chaotic, slowly losing its humanity almost. Like, these people do some batshit crazy things and hurt each other over petty stuff. Things that you think, if you're thinking rationally, you realize, okay, this is not something I really need, and it's not the end of the world. Or thinking, how could this person do this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. There's no way this person could have done this. But in these people's heads, it's like, of course they did this, or like they hate me or whatever, or they're horrible, they're jealous of me or whatever. You get a lot of that, these people that are not thinking clearly and not thinking rationally and are selfish and crazy. And I like how this really looks at the negative side of humanity and how selfish we can be and how greedy we are. And I've read a lot of horror books that talk about that kind of delve into that, and it's like downright scary, and you just get so frustrated with these characters, and you're just like, you want to shake them and be like, stop talking nonsense. It's like, hello, think clearly, think rationally about this. Of course, these people are probably too far gone at this point. I also, oh my god, Leland Gott was such a great antagonist. He's charming, but creepy and unsettling. He can be charismatic, but then something's not entirely right with him. You can't trust him, but sometimes you can't help it. He seems just so friendly on other times, and he really knows how to soothe people. He's like a snake, where he can, like, slither and whisper thoughts in your ear and make you think you can trust him, and then bam, he twists around, wraps around you, and, like, metaphorically speaking, eats you. Again, the Ka from the Jungle Book comes to mind, which I was kind of a little annoyed because I could have included Jungle Book as on my nephew's audio player, but he's a little kid, so. But anyway, it was kind of hard to, he wouldn't sit still with the audio player, so I didn't get all of it. But anyway, that's off topic. He's a great antagonist. Anything else about this? Oh, one other thing, whether you are like me and stopped watching this particular show or still watch it and still loved it all the way to the end, I gotta say, Leland Gott kind of made me think of Mr. Gold a little bit, only 10 times more evil. Although apparently later on in the series, Gold becomes pretty evil, or is portrayed as evil and has a black heart and everything, so. But yeah, I just kept picturing Robert Carlyle as Leland Gott. But now I know it's already been adapted. But Mr. Goldshot reminded me of Needful Things a little bit. The little shop Needful Things. So so far, I really enjoyed this. I had a good time with it. Okay, so next. is the first book in a trilogy. Actually, let me find it. Where did I put it? And that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. Our main character, Rin, lives with foster parents, and they're going to marry her off. And that's the last thing she wants, because she knows that the husband she marries is going to treat her poorly. And, so she goes to her teacher in the town where she lives and asks him to help her get into this infamous military academy, which has this test that's very hard to pass. But because she has a great memory, she's able to master and pass the test. And gets into school. But, of course, even though she gets into school, it's not as easy as she thinks. Her peers she doesn't get along with her peers. She ends up provoking one of her teachers and gets kicked out of class. And this one teacher who has been outcast because he teaches a subject people don't trust, a subject that people don't trust. They fear it. They think it's outdated, and it's very old magic. But this teacher sees potential in Rin to learn this, and because she is desperate, she goes along with this teacher with these unconventional methods. And she is a little reluctant. Like I said, she's very reluctant, but she goes along with this anyway. And she ends up proving that she's very capable of harnessing this old magic that connects her to the gods of this world. And just right in time, enough for war has happened, come to their country, their kingdom. And these young students, who I guess as far as our age would either be like high school or college age, are forced to go to war. And Rin and her peers settle their differences because they all become soldiers at a very young age. And then she ends up getting put with this group of people who can do the same magic she can do. Which her teacher, the teacher at the school was afraid of, because once this magic involves, like I said, connecting with the gods, and it can consume you, and it begs the question of, is it worth using this magic to fight the gods, and is it good, or does that make it good or bad? That's one of the things I really love about this book, is the war is not sugar-coated. It doesn't gloss over anything. It is gritty, it is dark, and it's very gray shaded with the, because these Rin and her peers are using this magic that can take them over and destroy them. But they're in the middle of this war that they want to win. They want to defeat the bad guy, and who they see as the bad guy. And it's like, is it worth it? Even though this can harm you, is it worth the risk? Because you could save lives. I also like how it's Asian-inspired country, and it's actually based on real history. Like, there was this real war I think it's China or Japan. And that's what R. Kwong based this story on. I also like the magic system, because it's the whole idea of connecting to the gods and it being dangerous and seductive at the same time. And like I said, it gets philosophical in a way, because it's like, is this worth it for these young kids to do? And are they heroes or not for using this magic? And it's just really cool and really fun, in a very dark, twisted kind of way. I also like how the relationships with the characters they're very, realistic, in my opinion, because, these people aren't, besties, but they could be friends, and they are on shaky ground with each other, oftentimes, and, I had a great time with this. I'm going to read the second book this year, and I got by the third book, which I think had a lot of mixed opinions. Not everybody loved it, but I really like, and Rin is a great character. She's not a nice person. She can be a bitch, but it makes her a very interesting character and sympathetic, and her conflicting feelings on using this magic make her, I think, very authentic person, very real person. And like I said, she's not nice, but she's very much, I think she's very real and relatable, in my opinion. Also, I love, like a lot of fantasy readers, I love the whole school, I love the school storyline, even if it's, military school, which I would not go to. I would never, get into military. But just seeing them take lessons and just the training sequences, and I think it's like I said, it's really fun, and I'm looking forward to Republic of the Dragon Republic. Okay, next is actually, okay, and normally I don't do this because it's the second book in a series. There's only so much I can say about it. But I did like the second book better. This is the Riftwar Saga. It's 4 books. It's written by Raymond E. Feist. And the first book is about our main character, Pug, who, he's an orphan, and he's at that age where him and his friends can be apprentices, joint apprenticeship. And of course he has where he wants to be apprenticed to in mind, who he wants to be apprenticed with. But unfortunately he does not get chosen. Or at least it seems like he's not going to get chosen at first with who he wants to go to. But then the Duke, who instead of a kingdom, they live in a dukedom. The Duke's magician, who had met Pug before, he saw potential in him for magic, and he decides to take Pug on as an apprentice. And at first, the first book starts as very much of a coming of age story, and how like this kid is learning magic, but in it he doesn't learn the same way the Duke's court magician does. And there's a bit of a romance between him and the princess, Duke's daughter, Princess Caroline. Who he's still a young man, and so there's a bit of a love triangle, which one of the things I liked about the first book is with the love triangle, it did not last. Raymond E. Feist did not drag it out. It was actually kind of cute and it was nice to see the two, because the two guys fighting over the princess actually end up getting along, and they beat the shit out of each other for a little bit, but then they actually end up getting along and becoming friends. And they decide, look at this as a friendly competition, and at the end, whoever she chooses, it's not a big deal. We won't get mad at each other. But anyway, the story quickly, halfway through the book, these invaders from another world show up, and a war begins in this kingdom, in this dukedom. And they have to join forces with other allies. So Pug and his friends, including the princess, and the other guy that's in love with the princess. I'm sorry, I cannot remember the other characters' names. And his friend, Pug's best friend, are sent to war at very young ages. They're only teenagers, and it's really, I really like it because at least to me, it felt very different from what I'm used to reading as far as fantasy. But then maybe that's because I'm still kind of getting more and more interested in adult fantasies, and there's some adult series that I'm reading that I already heard so much about as it is, that it almost doesn't feel original. It feels something I've read before, but it's probably just because I've heard so much about them anyway. In this 4-book series, I haven't heard anything about this 4-book series. So the second one, which picks up, of course, where the first one left off, and the characters are still in the middle of the war with these people from another world. And we get a lot of great character development with Pug and his peers. And so the other kids, like his master, and the Duke and his sons. He has 2 sons. And we get a lot more world building. Like, we get to explore beyond the dukedom a little bit more in the second book, a lot more. And then we even get to explore the world where the invaders live through Pug's eyes, because he ends up stuck with them in the first book, which is all I'm gonna say spoiler wise. So we get to explore the other world as well. And I gotta say, and I don't know if this is because of reading Gates of Rome back in February, but the other world, their world reminds me a little bit of Rome. And there is a gladiatorial related scene in the second book. There's another potential love interest for Pug in the second book, and I thought that was a really cute story. And there are some character deaths which are really sad. I like this one better. There was so much more in this second book than the first book, although I love the first book. Like I said, I can't really say a lot because you would have to read the first book. It's really good series. I'm gonna read Silverthorn, I think the third book is called, so I'm gonna read that one. And that one kind of looks at some other characters that are in this one that play major roles in these first two books, but the character didn't really, I think, take center stage. Although the book doesn't really, like, it starts out as being mostly focused on Pug, but then we get a lot of the other characters as well. And there's actually his friend, Pug's best friend, has an interesting storyline with the direction the story takes with his character. He grows up pretty fast in this book, his friend. And not in the way you expect, you know. Next is a classic. Let me find it. And that is Middlemarch, about George Eliot's Middlemarch, one of her biggest books. So far, I've only read this one and Silas Marner, but I do have a few other books by her as well. They just haven't gotten to yet. And this one, I think, is very intimidating for most people. This is all about the town of Middlemarch. And I think in the lives of these group of characters and their marriages, and there's some social politics and religion in this one. And I think the fan favorite in this story is Dorothea, who decides to make her own decision about who she wants to marry, but that does not go as she expected. You know, she thinks she knows what's best for herself, but then it ends up proving how young and naive she really is as her marriage progresses and not in the best way. What else did and I love, once again, small town, but in England this time. I just love small town stories. And also, I think it's, as far as, like, reading goes, easier reading. I think this is one of the easier classics to read. I think it's very readable. And the marriages, looking at these marriages it was really interesting seeing these marriages and how complicated and messy these marriages are, and how these people get caught up in love and what they think they should do and who they should marry. And it does not go well. Like, they're trying to make the best decision for themselves, and they are not making the best decision for themselves. And we get a little bit of religious politics in this one, which added another layer to the story. I definitely like stories where we talk about politics and religion, but back in the day. I would not be interested in reading contemporary stories about that, like nonfiction and stuff like that, on politics. Again, enough of our world's politics, you know. And, but it's an interesting look at all that kind of stuff, and exploring right and wrong and what people's differing opinions. And also, it just exploring the lives of these people and their marriages, and not a whole lot happens. It's not a super action-packed story, but it is, a compelling read. You just want to keep going because you want to find out what happens with these characters. And I did get some teases here and there about this book before I, started reading it. And as I was reading it, so I was like, okay, when am I going to get to that part? Or, oh, I think this is... That spoiler kind of makes me think this is going to happen with this character. But yeah, this was really this is really great. This was really nice, and like I said, it's a book that I think the longer you sit with it, the more you appreciate it and enjoy it. Unless you're just someone who this kind of stuff bores you, just altogether don't read any of it. So that's the only classic on this list. Okay, so next is, another classic, actually, a classic that I was surprised how much I really loved it. And, because it does have some elements that I think, especially for women, female readers wouldn't love, wouldn't appreciate, and that is the Odyssey by Homer. And I actually attempted to read this once before. I borrowed it from the library, but then I don't think I ever even cracked it open. I was just, I'm so smart, I'm gonna get that book. And then I never really read it. I might have attempted to read it. Actually, I probably at least attempted to read it, but then it was just going over my head. But reading it now, years later as an adult, and the fact that it's written like a novel, like I was expecting it to be an epic poem like the Iliad, and it's not. Which, by the way, I think technically you're supposed to read the Iliad first. This is about Odysseus, and the reason why you would read the Iliad first is this one is about his journey home from the Trojan War, which is what the Iliad is about. And it takes him quite a long time to get home. It's like, if you're in the car, if you decide to drive cross country, and every time, and I think I got this comparison on a review on Goodreads or something, and you constantly kept stopping, going all these different, or staying the night in different cities, or like, little towns or whatever, that's what this would be like. And it's even worse, I think, because our, Odysseus is sailing, and meaning running into monsters. Poseidon is not giving him any help at all, and Athena's trying to help him. This was actually a really fun adventure story. It doesn't look good for women. The women are either seen as evil bitches, manipulative bitches, or just loyal to their wives, although Athena is probably pretty badass, although she doesn't do a whole lot, but she does help guide him. Like, this is also the novel that includes Circe, the actual story of Circe, or not the actual, but this is where Madeline Miller's inspiration comes from in her novel. This is where Circe shows up. And it's kind of a story within a story. It's like Inception. Like, the first half is present day, I think, and then where he has stopped to stay with some people, and the second half is the second part of the story is him telling these people about one of his adventures and the monsters he's encountered. And then the rest of the book is present day. And you see that his wife, Penelope, is dealing with, they all think Odysseus is dead. And all these guys are like, oh, Penelope, now you can marry me instead. And this is pissing her off. And so it's pissing off Odysseus' son, Telemachus. I cannot remember. Now I don't know how to say it. I used to know how to say it. And he is trying to go find out what happened to his father. I think he goes to Agamemnon and his wife Helen to find out what actually happened. Or not Agamemnon, or, Agamemnon's brother, or no, I can never remember who was the one that was married to Helen, but the remaining, he talks to them and finds out what happened with his father. This is such a great adventure story. I like, for some reason, the aspect that I remember the most is his encounter with the Cyclops, because he's such a dumbass, because he's like, you know, he taunts and messes with the Cyclops and just escapes just in time, but then he rubs in the Cyclops' face as they're sailing away, and he's like, you know, he had tricked the Cyclops, and you know, he was doing so great, and then he screws it up by taunting the Cyclops and revealing his true identity, which he, you know, it's like, you idiot. But in a very funny, it's like, ridiculous kind of way. And, I think if you're a fantasy fan of modern, then you might still enjoy this. I mean, it's slow, but it has a lot of great fantastical elements in it, like sirens and cyclopses and it's funny. It's kind of funny too, and just and all the suitors are like, oh well, Odysseus is dead, so it's all, you know, it's all good. We're not going to even bother listening to his son, who should technically be the man of the house. We're just going to go mess with, you know, try to seduce, even though she has no interest in any of them, and she's very loyal to Odysseus, whether he's dead or not. And it's, like I said, it's fun, and, I also like this cloth-bound edition. I really like these cloth-bound books. But, yeah, this is great. I like this. Okay, so next, is one that took me years to read, but I finally finished it, and with the help of audiobook. And that is the Count of Monte Cristo. This is a revenge story about this guy, Edmond Dantes. He's a sailor, and he just gets promoted over a veteran employee of his master, who is very jealous of Dantes. He is engaged to this beautiful woman, who her cousin, is interested in her and is jealous because she's engaged, is jealous because Dante's engaged to her, and apparently it was normal for cousins to fall in love and get married. And they team up with him and his dad's renter, and to get rid of Edmund, they frame him for being a Napoleonic supporter, and he is in the Chateau d'If prison for 15 years. But he ends up escaping. He and decides to create this whole new identity after coming across a treasure that he was told about by his cellmate, who also taught him a lot of things that he did not know, and educated him about this mysterious treasure of the Count of Monte Cristo, of the Isle of Monte Cristo, and he creates the identity of the Count and goes to seek revenge on the people that betrayed him. And it's such a great revenge story. It has such an intricate plot, so many things that you don't know what Dantes is gonna do. You don't know, and like, these people have, done pretty well for themselves, and they have kids, so the next generation, their kids are caught in the middle of his revenge plan, and like, so much is going on, and I definitely think if this ever gets adapted again, it should be a TV series, because they could really spend a lot more time and include almost everything. Of course, if they have to change things, which that's inevitable, there's so much that happens, and you don't know what Dantes is gonna do. It's really exciting and thrilling. Now it does get slow in the middle, at one point, and there were times when I was wondering, is this relevant to what's going on? There's so much going on in the story, and I feel like you don't know what is relevant, and like how is this relevant to the main plot? And I just had a really good time with this. You know, it was long and at times kind of slow, but Edmund is such a compelling character because, you know, he's so nice and everything, but then after he gets betrayed, seeing his downfall from Grace, and someone said that this was very much like, compared this to Batman and kind of what happens to him, to Bruce Wayne. And and saying how Edmund Dante's story is the same way, because, you know, you have this kid who was really nice and had this great life, then he gets his parents killed and decides to seek revenge on whoever killed his parents, and it's kind of the same thing where this Edmund has a good life and then he gets betrayed and thrown in prison for a period of time, and it changes him, you know, not for the better. And I just, you know, it was so, like, I definitely recommend reading this book. You know, if you liked the 2002 movie already, you know, check out the book. A lot more happens in this book than in that movie. And yes, I'm going to bring up that movie. I know I brought it, you know. It's not a good adaptation, but still a great movie. And I definitely recommend checking out this book. I had such a great time reading this book. Like I said, it is slow, but it is over 1,000 pages. But I definitely think what really helped is the audiobook. I read an audiobook version of this as well, or listened to. I didn't stare at the pages and read the words. Someone else read them to me. So I got the audiobook because I just didn't know. I wasn't picking it up. Like, yes, I enjoyed this, but I was not picking it up. And, yeah, so check it. Like, it's a great revenge story, and it was considered a sensational novel at one time. Okay, so next is another classic, but a more modern classic. This is another one that took me forever to read, even though I was enjoying it. I did enjoy it. And that is East of Eden, which is a retelling of the Cain and Abel story. It's just really, like, it's a story about brothers and how sometimes people can get, like, in both brothers, between both brothers, a woman gets between them and destroys their bond, their friendship, kind of messes their brotherhood. And also beautiful descriptions of the California country and farmland. I really like Ali, the servant, who's from China. He's very philosophical and very interesting, down-to-earth guy. And I find it funny that he kind of played like the dumb foreign Chinese man, but then he's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. And he actually, and one of the things, he pretends to speak in broken English, but then he actually can speak in regular, regular English, what is considered English for us. Also, what else did I say? I really like, Kathy as an antagonist. She's such a bitch and so mean and horrible and manipulative. She will get people to like her, fall in love with her, and then she'll just pull the rug out from under you and destroy you. And she does that to Adam Trask, one of the brothers. And then she leaves Adam after she gives birth to her children and abandons them because she does not have a heart, this woman, and becomes a mistress of a whorehouse. But how she gets to there, she manipulates, she becomes friends with the original mistress, and manipulates her and gets her to trust her, and then eventually destroys this woman and takes over and slowly poisons her and takes over. So she's such a great antagonist because she's so horrible. You just hate her so much. At the same time, you love her as an antagonist. You love to hate her. The relationship between the brothers is like such an interesting story to read. So endearing, and you just want to see them become close again and not let this woman come between them in both cases. Although the one that comes between the twins is not as bad, and she's not mean like Kathy is. And the relationship, the complications of of both brothers' relationships is very engaging to read about. Because you are sympathetic for them and you want to understand them. But at the same time, you get frustrated with them and lose patience. But like I said, it's a great read. Again, it's a little slow at times. But still great. And I do want to reread this at some point. Okay, so next. Okay, so this is one of the few ones that I don't have. I did end up putting in the donation pile, but I did love it. It is a favorite. But that might, and that is H's for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. This is a memoir, about Helen MacDonald raising a hawk, a ghost hawk, and training it. And it's during a time when she's just lost her father and she's grieving his loss and struggling. And she kind of connects with this ghost hawk. I can't remember what she named it, but it was a female though, I believe. And she bonds with it, and she kind of sees herself as becoming like a hawk. She isolates herself from humanity and like kind of sees herself in the hawk. And she also compares her training to T.H. White, whose relationship with the hawk was great at first, but I think somehow it did not go well later as their time progressed. And she's trying to do better. She was trying to do better. It's actually a very endearing story and very sweet, just seeing her bond with this bird. And she even gets very emotional at one point when she has to send the bird away. And coincidentally, while I was reading it, while I was sitting outside reading the book, our neighbors had a hawk in one of their trees. Although I didn't actually really get a good look at it because it was pretty way high up there. But it was kind of cool just to while I was reading that knowing there's a hawk above me, in the trees. It's it's also a very easy read. Like, I like memoirs because they're very easy and very personable. And this one definitely was. And like I said, I think it was just the whole story of the author raising this ghost hawk and bonding with it. That is really a beautiful story. I know the author has other books recently come out. I don't know if I'll read those or not. But I'm glad I read it. Thanks to Olive from a book Olive. Okay, so next is one that was kind of an indirect recommendation from Darlene Desi. Halloween 2019, I think she read, or 2020. It might have been 2020. She read this for Halloween, and I watched her vlog on it, so I decided to buy the book myself and read it. And that is Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker's Dracul, which is the fictionalized version of the origin story of Bram Stoker writing Dracula, what inspired Dracula. And it's Dacre, as it starts when he's a young man, and he had this weird, intimate encounter with his nanny, this woman who took care of them, him and his sister and brother, and something happened with her, and one day she ended up disappearing on him, and so he and his siblings set out to find her, and there might be something actual vampirism involved. This is so creepy and unsettling, just scary. You didn't know what was gonna happen. You didn't know, and we didn't know if the nanny was the bad guy or not. And I think a lot of things that I didn't like about Dracula, this one being a modern novel, fixed. Because, I like Dracula, but there are aspects of it that I didn't like. Like, I'm not a big fan of the female characters in Dracula. And there were times where there was endless monologues and, and even from characters that I liked in that book, and this, being a modern novel, changed those things. It was kind of cool to see them potential, potential inspiration for Dracula. And it's kind of, I like spending time with Bram Stoker and seeing him as a young man. Like I said, I don't know how historically accurate. There is a little bit of a author's note in the back that kind of talks about him writing this book. And it was such a great, creepy, unsettling, but fun read for October. Like I said, this comes from being, like I said, if you're a fan of Dracula, Dracula is one of your favorite classics, and you haven't heard this, check this book out. It's great. It's a great, compelling, fun read, kind of that to read with Dracula. Next, okay, we're down to another classic, a modern classic. And I definitely like this better than his other book that I had to read for school, and I read it again. That is, is Something Wicked This Week. The book, his other book, which is, Fahrenheit 451, and this is Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Come, and this is kind of part of a series. I think it's probably more of a companion series, because this is a very different story. It just takes place in the same town, but I think it's a different story from the book that comes before this. And we have a small town that where a mysterious carnival shows up in their town one night, and just before Halloween, and like in Needful Things, the carnival worker offers to fulfill the residents' deepest desires, but there's a price to that. And there's these two young boys who are coming of age who kind of get mixed up in this. They are our narrators, and they're absolutely terrified, and one of them is kind of drawn to the carnival, and the carnival master and wants to take up his offer. And it's, like I said, it's coming of age story. It's about growing up. It's about the relationship between one of the boys and his elderly father. And again, this is another one where the antagonist is so great because he's so creepy. And he can, and again, like Leland God, he's charming at times. He can be likable, but also it's like you don't trust him either. And like I'm a big fan of carnivals and circuses, and like I said, I love the night circus, and this kind of reminded me of a darker version of that, a more sinister version of that. It's just, and also it's great to read this time, in October. It's a perfect October read because it takes place in October, and it was one of the first books I read in October. It was a very compelling, riveting read, just to get lost in this carnival and not knowing what's going to happen to these characters, these young boys, and I also appreciate that the dad was more involved, and he actually took the boys seriously. He didn't dismiss them, like a lot of urban fantasy stories where you have teenagers are saving the day, the parents are not taking it seriously, and or very overprotective because they're completely oblivious to what's going on because they don't believe it, which, yeah, maybe that is realistic to an extent, but the father, he believes his sons and doesn't dismiss them, doesn't talk down to them, and wants to actually help them, but not in a, you need some you need a therapist or something. You know, he actually wants to help them and stop the bad guys. It was great to read this, you know, and I want to watch the adaptation, which I did watch it years ago, but I barely remember, and for some reason I thought the main character was a girl. But nope, it's two boys. And I had such a great time reading this. It was so fun. It's dark, mysterious, and creepy. And yeah. Okay, next is one of the few I don't have, and that is Miss March by Virginia Fido, which I want to buy it. And this is one of those books with an unreliable narrator. Our main character, Miss March, we don't even know her first name. We just know her as Miss March. She's married to Mr. March, who's a famous author. And at one point, she just stopped reading his manuscripts. And just enjoys the fact that she's the wife of this famous author. And then one day, while she's at a local bakery, the woman who works there comments to her, "So how do you feel about your husband's main character of his latest novel being based on you?" And this makes our main character freak out because she knows that the main character in his latest novel is not a likable person. And she becomes just slowly starts to lose it because she doesn't know if these people, she starts to get paranoid, thinking and angry at her husband and very frustrated, and we see her slow descent into madness. And she's someone who's everything has to be perfect, everything has to be my way, you know, she's very step forward, you know, everything has to be pristine and everything. She has to present this perfect image to the world because, you know, clean lines and clean and neat everything, you know, she's a perfectionist. And we spend all of our time in her head watching her slowly, you know, just obsess over this and get paranoid. She even thinks that her husband might be having an affair, and it's so unnerving and unsettling because you are in this woman's head this whole time and you don't know what's true or not as you're reading this book. And you don't know if you can trust Miss March. You don't, and I like how the author did not reveal her first name. Because I think that adds to the story. It shows that she's not a person, she just is Miss March, you know, this famous author's wife. And you just spend, and this is and the writing is so, you know, the writing is so beautiful, though it's unsettling, and I just feel very relaxed and comfortable while reading it, but also unsettled at the same time and unnerved while reading it, if that makes any sense. I want to buy it. I think I'm going to buy it at some point when it comes out. I don't know if I'm going to wait until it comes out in paperback or not, or just buy the hardback at some point, but I really enjoyed this. Okay, 2 more to go, and, well, actually, yeah, 2 more to go. Next is The Only Good Indians, by Stephen Graham Jones. So this is on an Indian reservation, and years ago, this group of friends, this middle-aged men, they, on Thanksgiving, they end up shooting up this herd of elk, and including this mother elk who's pregnant, and they end up carving out and stealing her baby, I believe. And, it's years later, And the elks might be hunting them down, seeking revenge. And the elk may be, her spirit might be hunting them down. And it's about their lives after that, and how they deal with that, and how you don't know if this is really happening. This elk, the spirit of this elk is hunting, this mother elk is hunting them down or not. And we're divided into sections of the group of friends. There were 5 of them, I think. And we see their lives. And we also get into the she-elk's head. We spend time with her, really get to know her, and we almost feel bad and sympathetic towards her, and seeing her, and kind of like understanding her point of view. And it also, we get the Indian culture, the Native American culture, and we get brief glimpses of it. That's one of the things I really like. And also, I like how this was about the Native American culture, which, again, another group of people that we don't talk a lot about in schools. We don't study them a lot, and I want to read more books about this. Like, I know there's that one book series, I cannot remember what it's called, that also is about, Native American or Indian, the Indian culture and people. And it's, so, again, this is creepy, but also, like I said, you get to see the lives of these people, and see them slowly go crazy, and their friendship. And also, like I said, I like being inside of the she-elk's head, getting to see things from her perspective, and realize how complicated the situation is. And she feels, even though she's a literal animal, she feels very human. And, she loves her child, and these people killed them. And her desire for revenge is very, I think, would be relatable to, especially to women that are mothers. I think if you're a child, if some person harms your child. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. And then the last book I was able to squeeze in towards the end of December, right before the new year, and that is Joe Hill's Nos for A2. We have our main character, Victoria McQueen. She has a special gift. She can find things with help from her bike, and which leads her down this magic bridge, and takes things and helps her find things that are lost. And she ends up finding herself encountering this mysterious, creepy man, who is very vampire-like, in this group, Charlie Manx, who kidnaps kids who he feels are being treated bad by their parents, and takes them to Christmas Land, where they live forever as his children. And they become like, he sucks the life out of them, and he's very much like a vampire. And this is just so cool. Like, you really get to know Victoria, and Joe Hill, like his dad, is very much helps you get to know these characters, really spends time introducing these characters and getting inside their heads. And the guy, Charlie, is so creepy, and like, just, so is like, his Bing Partridge is, I hate him. He's creepy. And there were parts from his perspective, it was so hard to read from his perspective. It was, he was doing some horrible, shitty things to these people for Charlie Manx, and you almost pitied him. He was so pathetic. He's physically a grown man, but he has the emotional maturity of a child. And becomes, obsessed with Charlie Manx and completely devoted for him. And by the way, as someone who does not like the idea of having that mask put on your face to put you to sleep while you're going to surgery, I don't like that. And they had kind of a gas mask thing in here, and you like gas and stuff, and that really unsettled me. It made me uncomfortable because although that's not the worst uncomfortable parts, not the hardest parts to read, but yeah, that part as someone who was creeped out by that kind of stuff. And it's just so fun and great to read this story. Like, I was so glad I squeezed it into the end, at the last minute, and finished it. And I just, like I said, Joe Hill reminds me of Stephen King's, right? His writing reminds me of Stephen King's. And no, I don't agree with either side, because I know someone else who, know someone else who said, in their opinion, Stephen King is better, but a lot of people I'm seeing comments from saying that they think, Joe Hill's better, but I don't agree with either side. Okay? I mean, I've only read one Joe Hill book, so but I think both are great. So it's not one or the other for me. But I've read more King, and I've not read enough Joe Hill. Sorry, my book is just coming apart. I need to either buy a new copy or just continue to tape this book. I mean, thing is, though, I don't want to get rid of it either, so, because I don't want to have to pawn this off at somebody else. But, yeah, it was so great, and so unsettling, and you didn't, and I just kept turning the pages and wanting to know what was going to happen next, and when Mix and Vic were going to cross paths again. And again, this was another one of those books where is the character crazy or not? I also really liked Lou Carmody, the guy who Vic hooks up with, and because I won't say fall in love, but I guess she does love him, but her and him, Lou and the young woman that Vic met, who also had a Maggie something, and she also had a gift like Vic and Minx, where she could she had these Scrabble type tiles that could spell out words for her. She could instead of seeing visions, the Scrabble tiles tell her things. I like her too, and this is so exciting, and I just kept having to read. I mean, I did put it down for a period of time, but I just kept wanting to read, and it was such a great story, So anyway, those are my favorites for the year of 2021. So what are your favorites? Please feel free to share in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified when I post new videos. And I hope you are enjoying your reading and staying safe and healthy. And I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!